Vanya.
And he's facing off against the man in the top right, the blue Protoss player for Clash. It's Hellraiser.
All right,
There's a lot of really cool stuff to talk about, but I think it's probably going to have to wait for game 2 at this rate, because we have our Russian youngster going for a little bit of a cheeky 12 pool.
So breakdown. I mean, Peggy, again, you're a former professional esports legend. Break down for me. You're in Vanya's shoes right now. It's game 1, day 1. What possesses a Zerg player to go for a 12 pool against an opponent that they're slightly favored against? Is it hubris? Are they just super confident? What is he thinking here?
So, Hellraiser is, I mean, he's become a much more all-around player over the last year or so, but his roots are in doing his own cheeky stuff. You know, he likes to, he's been a large supporter, if you will, of two-base all-ins and all those kinds of builds for a long time. He's very, very capable of macro these days, but a player like that oftentimes can get thrown off if you can throw off their timings a little bit. The 12 pull is not really an all-in. It's really just kind of a pressure build. The main goal of it, if you can find some damage, that's really, really nice. But since you're gasless, you're able to make quite a few drones behind it. And basically the main goal here is, or the minimum goal, I should say, is to throw Hellraiser off of his timings, maybe delay the Nexus just long enough that he can actually get a little bit of an economic advantage. But Hellraiser so far is doing a really, really good job of holding this. Just microing these Zealots perfectly. Vanya tries to get us around on one of them, but again, just really, really good micro so far by Hellraiser, just beginning to whittle away these Lings. But there's still more coming, and they've gotten this around now.
Yeah, a little surprising to see Vanya throwing this many Lings at the front wall of Hellraiser that's already finished up. The Adept should be able to clean these up. I don't think that gateway is going to go down. And Hellraiser finally will drive Vanya back, but look at this. He's forced out an extra pylon, right? That gateway's early. He's lost a couple Zealots, and as you said, that Nexus now down at about 245 instead of slightly earlier, as Hellraiser may have hoped. So, in your professional opinion, Pengy, successful 12 pool. Is Vanya all right behind this?
I would say that he accomplished his minimum target. He's probably, Hellraiser is going to be pretty happy with the way he held that. I think both players are going to be okay with how that went at the end of the day. The big question now is going to be how much damage these two Adepts can pull off. So one of the main problems with going for a 12 pull, I mentioned that it's gasless. That obviously means no link speed, which means holding off Adepts is going to be a lot harder. Now, if Vanya can hold this off without taking damage, he'll be in a perfectly fine position. But if he loses 2, 3, even 4 workers, then all of a sudden, Hellraiser's feeling great about the position in this game.
Nice zoning work here initially by Vanya. These Queens in a really smart position. The Queen from the natural even being drawn up to the main here. It looks like these Adepts going to be forced to shade out. Both of them will make it down to the natural base here. And this pressure is actually continuing from Hellraiser, who's bringing a third Adept to the party. But nice pull there from Vanya. Going to save all but 2 drones, and it looks like he should be all right here. Well, there's 3, but I think the last Adept will make it out. Oh my god, back in the main base. Hellraiser's being so aggressive here, Pengy.
Yeah, he really is. If he gets this last drone, though, he's not going to. So 4 workers, it's nice, but losing all 3 of those Adepts does mean that Vanya behind this is going to feel very, very safe to just drone up quite a bit. Hellraiser behind this is looking to put on even more pressure with the Adepts. He's got 3 more moving out now, and of course the Resonating Glaives upgrade coming on in. So we may be gearing up for a little bit of a very, very heavy Adept push coming in about a minute or so.
This is such a cool build from Hellraiser here. I like when players do this kind of thing where my guess is at the beginning of the game, Hellraiser's like, all right, we'll probably go Glaive to Depths here. It's a strong build all around. You see it very often in this PvZ matchup. And I do wonder if the 12 pool threw him off his game a little bit and he was like, all right, I got to make some changes. I got to cut some corners now. There's no Robo. There's no Warp Prism for this push. Still going to go Resonating Glaives, but it doesn't look like it's quite as all in as we see some other Resonating Glaive attacks. With no Robo, it's going to be fairly unsustainable to keep this pressure on for too much longer. But I think Vanya should be all right behind it. What do you think, Pengy?
It really, again, just kind of comes down to how well he handles this. The zoning that we saw in the first little pressure from the Adepts was really, really good by Vanya. We have the Adepts pushing on forward a little bit here. They're going to try to get a Queen. This, even though there was no Resonating Glaives for that, that kind of does telegraph what Hellraiser's going for. You don't make that many Adepts if you're not planning on committing to the upgrade. Like you said, though, no Robo, no Warp Prism. So it's not going to be super all-in or anything, but that doesn't mean that he's okay with doing no damage. He's delayed all of his tech and his third base to the point where even though he's not going 8 gates or something like that, he absolutely needs to find something with this push because he's just getting so far behind economically and in tech.
Absolutely. The Baneling Nest coming down here from Vanya. Not going to be done by the time these glaives hit. And oh my gosh, Hellraiser going for a Stargate behind this. Now, this is unusual. A double Stargate behind this. That makes a little more sense. Normally, of course, I see Protoss players going Stargate into Resonating Glaives if their Stargate doesn't work. But here's a big shade from Hellraiser right into the natural mineral line here. Decent links around, but Hellraiser's in a pretty good position there, not allowing a lot of surface area on those links. And he really should be focus firing drones here, right, Pengy?
Yeah, I mean, getting all those lings is a huge deal. That's a ton of larvae. He's now starting to go after the drones. It almost looked like Vanya didn't expect the glaives upgrade there. And now, I mean, these adepts are just going to continue putting on so much pressure. While, I mean, Vanya's keeping a lot of these drones alive, but they're not mining. They're just running between the bases. And, I mean, while these adepts are a little bit low, some of them, there's still 7 of them alive. There's so much damage output in this army. Cancels that shade. He's going to be able to recall out with 6 of them. And that puts Hellraiser borderline insurmountably far ahead here. He's going into double Phoenix production behind this. He's going to be able to take to the skies, take full map control, and now he's going to put down that third. 28 workers are all that remain for Vanya. He invested so many larvae into those Zerglings and still lost 17 workers total this game so far.
Yeah, that's rough to see. Vanya really struggling in this game. And Vanya, I think, I don't know about if you'd agree with me here, Peggy, but I think Vanya probably the favored player in this matchup between these two. I think he's doing better in the group stage right now, slightly higher than Hellraiser. Neither of these players mathematically limited from their group yet, but both of them really need this win if they want to stay competitive in this group. Barely shades away at the last minute. A lot of Banelings being expended, though, and this Glaive to Depth push really, again, not that committed from Hellraiser. There's no Warp Prism like adding on more Glaive to Depths. He's not adding on more gateways back home to try and warp more stuff back in. As you said, heading in to this Phoenix play, and these Phoenix, most importantly, I believe, have been held completely secret. Vanya has not seen these Stargates. He does not know about the Phoenix. He's got to suspect some transition, but double Phoenix is not going to be the most common transition out of this.
It's also not going to be the best way to hold this third. +1 melee is done for these lings. A couple of Banelings are all that's going to be needed to get rid of these adepts. Vanya, I mean, Hellraiser throwing away all those adepts may have actually opened the door for Vanya to try to get some damage done of his own and at least equalize the game a little bit here. He's not going for the third just yet, going for the guaranteed damage. He knows that he's going to be able to get this third. He knows this is not going to be a hard kill for him. So trying to pick off as many adepts as he can get before going for the third. The cancel comes down right at the last second, and while Hellraiser's still in a better position, I would definitely say that he's still ahead. That's a nice way for Vanya to get back into this game a little bit, but still, there's not really much in the way of anti-air in the main. The spores are not done yet, and the 6 Phoenix is popping on in. There's going to be a lot more drones on the menu for our Protoss player here. Even more economic damage going down on the Zerg side of the map.
And not just very, very late Spore Crawlers and not enough Queens, but also these Phoenix have been hanging around the main base of Hellraiser forever now. So that Gravitic Beam energy, very high for the Phoenix, able to pick up 8 extra drones. The total drones gone down now this game is 30 drones have disappeared this game. So even though Vanya's doing Vanya's doing a good job keeping Hellraiser only on 2 bases, the economic damage, as you said, almost unsustainable here. The Void Ray, the Oracle, going to be able to drive all this back, and now I think Hellraiser finally has enough beef in his army to protect his 3rd base and maybe finally get it down. Still no 4th from Vanya.
Yeah, and I think that the Phoenix transition from Hellraiser was so smart. He identified very early on in that push at the Adepts that he killed so many workers that Vanya doesn't have the money to put down spores. He has to hold down the D key, essentially, and just make as many drones as possible. So what's the best way to capitalize on that? Well, make some Phoenixes. And now, I think we saw brilliant splitting there on that hold there by Hellraiser. With Banelings, Adepts can be a little bit yikes. If you don't really see the push coming, just 4 Banelings is all that you really need to clear out most of the Adepts, and then the Lings can make the quick work of the remaining army. But now, the Adept count is getting to an insurmountable number, and that's going to be it. GG is called. Game number 1 goes to Hellraiser with some clean, aggressive play, I think it's fair to say.
I just realized my overlay said NA region the entire time. Apologies if you were thrown off. This is not the NA region. This is in fact EU, of course, both Russian players here, Vanya and Hellraiser. But yeah, very clean play, and I think that's the best way to describe what Hellraiser was up to that game, Pengy. Starting with the Adepts and even moving in through his tech transitions, at no point was I like, man, Hellraiser seems like he's a bit lost, he's confused. This was a very crisp build, it was very clean, and the execution on the other side of the map was really impressive. I'm a bit concerned that Vanya wasn't able to respond to that very reasonable Adept harass. Just
I
didn't seem
think
to
a
read it
lot of
very
that
well.
came down, honestly, to just like the Baneling Nest being a little late. I think his timing was a little off on that. He was definitely relying on Banelings to deal with the Adept push, and they just weren't there.
Okay.
But we're going to be getting into Death Aura for game number 2, and once we're in there, I have some cool little analysis on these two players for us.
Oh, I'm so jazzed. I love some pro analysis. This is so good. I'm going to be relying on Pengy really heavily today, guys, as I'm running a broadcast today. Normally when Grant runs the broadcast on the B stream, I just like watch the games and have Liquipedia up, and I can like check a Ligulac for player rankings and everything. Luckily, Pengy here has agreed to help me out with a lot of that analysis and info. So yeah, let's hop into this game. We'll watch the quick video, and then we'll get into these players. All right, Pengy, you ready to drop some knowledge on the people?
Yeah, let's introduce our players first. In the bottom left, we have our red Zerg player, currently 4-1 in the groups, doing very, very well this season. It's going to be Vanya.
And his opponent. In the top left-hand side, in the blue from Clash Gaming, it is Russia's Hellraiser.
Ukraine.
Oh my god, I do it every time, Pengy. And of the two countries to mess up, those are the worst.
Yeah, they're not great.
I don't know what it is, but something about Ukrainian and Russian players, I struggle so much.
So
I think it's because a lot of them are on the Russian teams, right? So like Cascade Games, and it always throws me for a loop. So apologies. Yes, Hellraiser Ukrainian, not Russian. Really quick note.
So
go ahead, Pengy. What's up?
You talked about a little bit about how you considered Vanya to be a little bit favored in this matchup. I actually kind of disagree. I definitely buy into what you mentioned that Vanya is doing better in the groups. I'm gonna go with a little bit of a weird take here. I think that Vanya is a slightly better player right now, and I also think that Hellraiser is favored.
Oh my god, say more right now, Pengy.
So Vanya's been really doing well the last couple of seasons. I think his sort of breakout performance for people who do more than just watch the mainstream came at summer last year, where he had an incredible run through the summer knockout bracket. He lost in group stage 1, but then kind of went on an absolute tear, winning 5 matches in a row, including wins against Ziggy, Estrella, Bystork. So awesome play by him in that event. And then he kind of just sort of fell into the shadows again for a little while. And then last season he did really, really well. He's been doing well online for a little while now. And then last season he had a great showing. This season he's doing well again. However, a lot of these Russian-Ukrainian CIS sort of region players, they play against each other quite a lot. The CIS region has a lot of their own tournaments. And it seems from the recent matchups that Hellraiser kind of seems to have Vanya's number. So while Vanya, I would say, sort of came into his top tier, like his current very, very high level of performing around sort of March, April-ish, he hasn't actually beaten Hellraiser in their last 3 matches. The last time he won against Hellraiser was in March. Since then, Hellraiser with 3 wins in a row, and one of them was the best of 1, so we can kind of discount that. But one of them was a best of 5 even, which is, I mean, generally considered, the better player usually wins a best of 5. It's very, very rare that somebody can meme out a much better player in a best of 5. And Hellraiser just seems to have maybe a favorable matchup stylistically. Maybe he just knows Vanya well enough that he knows exactly how to read him well. I mean, that's also a case that we see sometimes. Sometimes players who are not necessarily quite as strong will just be able to get in a much better player's head, especially if you're getting 2-3 wins in a row in tournaments. So that very well might be what's going on here. And Hellraiser looking, again, like he really had Vanya's number there, the 12 pool. Generally, if you go for a 12 pool, your hope is that the opponent's not going to be pylon scouting. A lot of the time, 12 pool will be used if you're specifically expecting your opponent to go for a gateway scout and try to capitalize on that. Hellraiser did not do that. And overall, Hellraiser's just, he looked great in the last game. We'll see if Vanya's able to sort of do something a little bit different this time. He's going for a lot more of a macro-focused build. But you know who's not? Mr. Hellraiser with a double proxy gate, looking like he wants to sell a story here.
No,
how many gates is he going to make at home? That's the question.
You're wrong, Pengy. It's not a double proxy gate. Come on,
Oh my god.
Improve your casting a little bit. Goodness gracious.
It's going to be... You know how it goes.
You got to shake the rust off. Come on. Triple proxy gate out for a Hellraiser. And now Vanya had this third base down before the 2-minute mark of the game. I don't know exactly about Zerg builds, but I feel like it's one of the quickest third bases you can possibly get in like a real competitive match. This build from Vanya seems to be exceptionally greedy, and he's seen the Void Ray. He's preparing for that adequately, I think, with Spore Crawler in the main. A couple more Spore Crawlers going down. But yeah, he is not going to be ready for this triple proxy gate. This is going to bring Hellraiser up to 4 gates total. Is it a depth time off the back of these gates, do you think, Pengy?
Probably. I mean, like, Stalkers aren't going to do too much. Zealots without charge aren't going to do too much either, so it's almost definitely going to be adepts. And this is really interesting. I love how Hellraiser is doing this, right? He's being very aggressive, but also without going fully all in both of these games. He's just applying quite a lot of pressure. The big problem for him is that I don't really know if it's going to work great with Vanya making as many lings as he's making, but he's sending them across the map. He's trying to go for a third denial, so we'll see. I mean, Hellraiser's just banking adepts here. He's not committing too early. He's waiting for a couple of warped cycles, and now with 7 adepts, the lings are on the other side of the map, Creighton. This is not where you want your lings to be if you're trying to defend against a 7 adept push. Oh,
man. We always talk about what the resources players have in the game, and army location is one of those weird, like, army. The amount of time your army is engaged is a big resource that it looks like Vanya's going to have some real troubles with. He's been pushed back at home, pushed back at Hellraiser's home by those oracles, and now the adepts in his natural. Already 6 drones have gone down. Vanya seems to be allergic to these medium-sized adept run-bys.
I think a lot of this is just how weird these timings are. These are not normal timings. This time, though, the Adepts do not have Resonating Blades. The +1 is nearing completion, so it looks like Vanya is going to be able to clean this up better than last time. He also has more workers behind this than he did last time around. He doesn't have 26. He's got 54, which is, generally speaking, more than 26. A couple more Adepts coming in, though. And again, though, Hellraiser's denying a lot of mining. A lot of these drones just running back and forth here. And the biggest problem on top of this going forward is that Vanya was trying to go Spire, and Spire, not great against triple Stargate Phoenix.
What is good against triple Stargate Phoenix if you don't scout it and your opponent gets up to 34 Phoenix? As a Zerg player, what is your response when you see 34 Phoenix in the air and you're just like, okay, well, here's what I have to do?
I mean, Phoenixes don't really scale that well, right? So if you play super defensively while also trying to aggressively expand, your creep is going to be very, very important. Your queen count is going to be very, very important. Getting into like more of a Hydra-based army can be very, very good as well.
Okay.
And from there, eventually Phoenixes just aren't really able to handle a ground army if the ground army spirals far enough. The problem is going to be you end up with this weird sort of window where you want to try to make an aggressive push happen before they get 6 carriers. And that's definitely where Hellraiser is going eventually here. He's definitely going to be going into the more beefy air units. But again, he's just going to be rallying the Phoenixes at home. This is definitely the correct play when you know your opponent's gone Spire. I do like that Vanya's not committing to Mutas here. I think one of the biggest mistakes that you can make as a Zerg player going Spire is taking a little bit of damage and going, man, I really hope he didn't see that Spire, and then just like hitting the T key and making 10 Mutas and going across the map. So I do like that Vanya is playing the safer path here, going for Corruptors. Corruptors are not a great way to push across the map against large numbers of Phoenixes, but they are great, especially on top of Spore Crawlers, on top of Queens, at just being able to zone the Phoenixes and making sure that you minimize the damage that they're doing. Queens coming on to assist this. Transfuses are going to be really, really useful here, and with Queen support, a small number of Corruptors can go quite a long way, but Hellraiser microing very, very well so far. Does lose a Phoenix there. And from here, I think we'll probably see him switch into Carriers or Void Rays soon. It looks like he's actually looking to go into ground tech here.
That was really interesting. I don't know if you caught that. He dropped his fleet beacon for like a moment and then canceled it back home, actually. So he did, and I thought, I figured he would go straight into Carriers. As you said, it's a very natural transition. Since he's got 3 Stargate down already, he had dropped the fleet beacon, and I thought, great, Carriers, this will be an easy one to understand. And instead, as you noted, canceling that fleet beacon, Forge, Twilight Council, and a 4th Nexus going down here for Hellraiser. I think that's a really unusual choice. Maybe he's concerned about the high number of Corruptors out already and doesn't want to try and fight into it. Maybe he thinks Vanya can get on top of him before that carrier count gets up to that scary 5, 6, 7 carrier number and really starts to destroy. But I will say these this focus fire on these Phoenix from Vanya, or from Hellraiser, doing a really nice job thinning out that Corruptor pack just a little bit, and it's going to force Vanya to build 7 more Corruptors that I don't think he really wanted to build there, Pengy.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird, right? Like, Phoenix versus Corruptor, Phoenixes get pretty wrecked by Corruptors at a certain point, but if you get past sort of critical mass, the Phoenixes just kind of bop them just because of the sheer number of of Phoenixes you have attacking. I feel like going into the ground army here makes a lot of sense. We already see Carapace coming in for the Corruptors as well, which means that carriers wouldn't really be doing too much to them. So I do like this play here by Hellraiser. And he does have those 3 Stargates, as you mentioned, so if he thins out the Corruptor count enough, let's say he takes a big fight with the ground army, doesn't quite end the game, he's more than capable of going into the carrier transition later on. But now we have a very aggressive push to essentially mass Corruptor here. The ground army has not really come to fruition just yet, and Vanya does have enough Corruptors to apply a lot of pressure, probably take out a base or 2. Ling's in the third as well, getting quite a bit of damage done despite the overcharge on that shield battery. And Vanya's doing a pretty great job this game, honestly.
Yeah, some really interesting transitions from Hellraiser. I love it when these 2 players are really responding well to the chess game that their opponent is sending forward and saying, oh, you're building this? All right, I'll counter with Y. You're going to counter with Y, I'll build Z. It's a really nice job from both players to sort of read what their opponent's up to and adjust their builds accordingly. Corruptors working down this Nexus in the natural. It looks like that natural Nexus will go down. He's going to sack a few Corruptors, but that's a really nice pickoff there by Hellraiser, actually getting both the main and the natural Nexus now, and that's, I think, going to force Hellraiser a little bit further forward in this aggression with the Phoenix that he maybe doesn't really want to take right now. The Zealots here to clean up just a little bit, but the Roaches should be able to drive everything back from Hellraiser here. I'm a bit concerned for his position, Peggy.
Yeah, we saw also Vanya, as soon as he scouted that it was a ground transition, just immediately held down the RT, just getting as many Roaches out as possible. He's in a great position right now. The army supply for Hellraiser plummeting to just 50, and a lot of that is in essentially ineffectual Phoenixes here. GG is going to be called. Vanya manages to take that game. Hellraiser may be getting a little bit too overzealous with the consistent tech switches there. It is nice to be able to switch tech and try to catch your opponent off guard, but it's also pretty expensive to build that much infrastructure.
That was definitely a lot of infrastructure out of Hellraiser there. We saw him start with the Stargate, moving into the proxy gates that were then depowered, moving back into Stargates. It just seemed a bit sort of looking for frenetic, maybe a bit of odd choices.
Good
sort of
word. I
back
like
and
that
forth.
word.
Yeah, I think so. From Hellraiser there. Nice responses though by Vanya, as you said. Every time he saw he saw the ground transition coming, held down the Roaches. Saw the Phoenix coming earlier, had those Corruptors ready to go. And I love that he didn't overcommit. We didn't see him build 300 Corruptors to try and fight, and then of course when the ground army came out, he was completely supply blocked on Corruptors or something. So nice measured responses from Vanya there, and we're going to see a game 3 here for our very first series, which is nice because usually on the B stream we get a lot of 2-0s here, Pengy.
Yeah, I actually just want to I'm watching the delayed stream right now, and I actually want to sort of touch on, I think that game looked a lot worse for Hellraiser than it actually was. It kind of ended up looking like a bop, right? But I feel like Vanya kind of hit a very tight window that he probably didn't actually know existed, where those Corruptors went in towards the 4th base, the 3rd base, right when the gateway explosion was finishing up. So if that happens, maybe 15 seconds later, there's a bunch more Stalkers on the ground potentially. There's a lot that, like, he probably still takes a bunch of economic damage, but he picks up a lot more Corruptors. Maybe the Phoenixes are then able to do a little bit more. I still feel like Vanya would have been in a better position, but I definitely feel like that looked a little bit less flattering for Hellraiser than it arguably should have.
Interesting assessment there. That's really, yeah, because as I don't want to say it was it didn't seem exactly like a bop, but it did seem a little bit one-sided there, especially near the end as Vanya was keeping up with those transitions a little better. Interesting to note that he was hitting that timing very quickly before those gateways were finished. So I love it when players, I'm sure if we asked him, he'd be like, no, I knew that was when the timing was going to happen. He was so ready for it.
It's that was definitely the correct move regardless. Like, you want to be applying pressure, but we'll see how this goes in game number 3. Who's going to take it between Vanya and Hellraiser?
And we are in spawning. In that bottom left-hand position in the blue. Representing Clash Gaming, it is the Ukrainian Protoss player. His name is Hellraiser.
And he's facing off against the red Zerg in the top right. From B100 SC, it's Vanya. Oh boy, Creighton.
Is it happening?
Oh boy. Here we go. Do you like cannons?
Who doesn't, Pengy? They're great, right?
Do you like... okay, this is an interesting place to put your cannons. I feel like the game the game plan here is probably to go hard into the Immortal follow-up. This is immediately scouted by Vanya, though. He's got, like, he doesn't have a pull yet, but he's got a... Does he commit to this, though? Because this is such a far way to pull your drones. This is weird. Oh, he's got the wall off, too, on the cannon, so no. This is going to be... Vanya just needs to try to hold. He needs to accept that this is happening and try to hold.
So, Pengy, when you say accept that this is happening, talk to people through what Hellraiser's game plan is here. He's got the forward gateway and the cannon. Looks like another cannon going forward. Then I imagine Zealots coming out soon to put pressure and maybe force a cancel on this natural. What does Vanya need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen?
So really, Hellraiser's game plan here is, I assume that he's going to be going into sort of the standard follow-up to a cannon rush where you're going to get a few shield batteries up, you're going to go into the robo, try to get some immortals up, get a warp prism, and essentially just immortal your opponent to death. Right. Now, usually you want to deny the natural in order to be able to have that economic sort of, not really advantage per se, but to limit the larva that the Zerg is able to use. And he's not going to be able to do that with this cannon position, so I do think that he's going to try to apply a little bit of pressure. The initial Zealot needs to scout, needs to try to just make sure he knows what's coming his way. It is Roaches, so probably going to be heavy on the Ravagers with the double gas. And really, Vanya just needs to make sure he doesn't lose this natural. If he loses the natural, all of a sudden he's in a very, very rough position. If he can hold the natural, though, with the creep spreading the way it is, cannons are not going to be able to get in range. The cannons are essentially just going to create a defensive position for these units. And Vanya just needs to make as good use of these Ravagers that are going to be coming out as he possibly can. I love what we have Hellraiser doing here with the Probe and the Zealot. The Probe applying just a little bit of extra damage to allow the Zealots to two-shot these drones. Only manages to get 2 to start, but still, every drone you can get is a big deal because Vanya needs to be spending as much of that larva as possible on units right now.
I feel like it's very important to point out that the Probe actually got one of those drone kills. It's one of my favorite things in StarCraft 2 when a worker gets a kill. It makes me so happy, so... Lucky little probe there, but the Ravagers are already out now for Vanya. And of course, Corrosive Biles can do a heck of a number on those photon cannons. But as you said, Hellraiser dropping down this robo facility is going to start working on Immortals and a Warp Prism. Now, the one thing I always ask myself here, Ravagers are great, of course. They can drive down the photon cannons, even with shield batteries here. But I always want to know, from a Zerg player's point of view, obviously the correct number is 0. But how many Immortals do you not want to see out of your opponent? Like, at what point does a Zerg player look at the Immortal number with a Warp Prism and say, you know what, that's just too many, no matter how many Roaches I have on the ground? I feel like 4 or 5 is the point where most Zerg players are kind of like, this is getting ridiculous.
As soon as they have 2 in a Warp Prism, it's really scary. Like, if their micro is good and Hellraiser's micro is very, very good, it becomes very, very scary very, very quickly. And I love the, like, the Corrosive Biles are doing a great job against these cannons, but the main point of the cannons at this point is just to buy as much time as possible. They're buying time for these Immortals. One's already out in a second, and he's going to be able to go into additional Immortals, and of course the shield batteries. A couple of them are depleted already, which is kind of nice, and we do have Vanya pushing this back further and further. But while the supply is very disparate right now, it's all about the Immortal count. If Hellraiser can get more Immortals out and just maintain his Immortal count, things are going to get very, very yikes very, very quickly. But there was a long period of time there where he wasn't actually producing an Immortal. He just started up his second one, so a little bit poor at the moment, Hellraiser. He doesn't really have the money he needs to make this work, and Vanya is beginning to snowball a little bit.
Interestingly, Hellraiser, he was starting his Warp Prism, actually, and then canceled it to go for Immortal number 2 instead. An odd choice there. Normally, it's a pretty clear-cut build order when you're up front here. You want the 2 Immortals first, then the Warp Prism, then the rest of your Immortals forever and ever and ever. So a bit odd for him to see him start that Warp Prism and cancel it. And as you said, delaying that Immortal quite a lot. These Corrosive Biles doing a huge number on these shield batteries. By the way, of the shield batteries that are down, only one, that one that just finished, has any real energy left right now. And it is so far back, meaning that Hellraiser's not able to pressure the natural of Vanya directly. He's got to move forward, put some pressure down, and then move all the way back in range of the shield battery. There's no shield battery energy right now, and as the Warp Prism pops out, this first Immortal might actually go down with some good target firing from Vanya.
We've had really, really good micro from Hellraiser so far, picking up quite a lot of Ravagers with good focus fire, and the Warp Prism finishes just in time. With that finishing up, Vanya may feel like he overextended a little bit. We've already seen 5 Ravagers go down. That's 500 gas right there. Only 6 on the map right now when this one, this Morphe finishes on up. And now, I mean, we've seen some hull damage go down on these Immortals. They're not quite as beefy as they once were, but they still have that incredible damage output. I mean, still though, Hellraiser's not in a position where he's ready to break just yet, but the army for Vanya looks the same as it did about a minute ago because of the losses that he's sustained. While Hellraiser's is getting stronger. He's up to 3 Immortals now. Almost loses one, but not quite. Great control here with that Warp Prism, just unrelenting with this lift up micro, and just such good micro out of Hellraiser. He's not out of the woods just yet, but he's continuing to pick off a lot of Ravagers here, and it looks like Vanya's Ravager count might just be being a little bit too depleted to make this hold work at this point.
Man, I cannot overstate. Nice pick off that last pylon, by the way. Depowering the Robo for a little bit here. And that's going to force Hellraiser to wait. But just going to say, really nice pick off there by Hellraiser. I can't overstate the amount of time that it took for that Warp Prism to get out was absolutely perfect. The second, I mean the millisecond, that Warp Prism popped out, Pengy, it picked up both the Immortals immediately, saving 2 Immortals from almost certain death. Were that Warp Prism delayed by 1 or 2 seconds, we would be seeing a completely different game right now.
We've seen a pretty big swell of units come out from Vanya right now. A lot of them are Roaches, but there's 4 Queens here as well. Not really any transfuse energy. We'll see if he's able to bust this down, but the 4th Immortal's out. And, I mean, 4 Immortals, so many Immortals, Creighton. Oh, no, he's forced into the high ground, and this is really oftentimes the turning point. As he's forced into the high ground, he may be able to delay the kill on the Natural, but the Natural is definitely going to go down at... I mean, he can even just, like, lift up a couple of Immortals and drop them on the other side if he really wants to. I mean, I do like that Vanya is committing to trying to keep that alive. He absolutely needs that larva production. But great micro again. 5 Immortals now. Not a single Immortal's gone down. 9 Ravagers, 12 Roaches, 3 Queens. So many units have fallen for Vanya. And again, we talk about how his army doesn't look like it's getting any stronger. It's being thinned out as quickly as it's being produced. While slowly but surely, Hellraiser's army becomes more and more formidable. 5 Immortals now on the march. Down goes the Natural expansion, and that's going to be it for the larva production. I mean, Ravagers don't really take that much larva, but there's just not that many units here for Vanya.
Nope, a bit of miscontrol there from Hellraiser with the one. Oh my god, I was about to say a bit of miscontrol. I spoke too soon. Of course, he has incredible, impeccable control there. Saving these Immortals very, very low, but my god, this was so close. The Warp Prisms continue coming. He's adding on a second Robo. The forward Nexus, it's for the Shield Battery Overcharge in case he gets forced all the way back here, and he can top up those Immortals lickety-split. Vanya trying to rebuild his Natural here, and the Robo Bay even going down. My god. I guess Hellraiser's transitioning to Disruptor from this. I don't think we'll get there. This game, I mean, Vanya has to end this game sooner rather than later. Even though Hellraiser's on 1 base, well, almost 2, he's still economically going to be just fine for so much longer than Vanya will be here. The Ravager count finally looking pretty good from Vanya, actually up to 9, but as you said, the losses he's taken here, 11 Ravagers going down to the, and I cannot stress this enough, Pengy, 0 Immortals lost here by Hellraiser. That's the key right there.
I mean, another very important thing to note, they've both been on essentially 1 base mining. That second base was never really mining for Vanya. Vanya has lost 2,500 more resources, despite an even income, which is a huge deal. We talked a little bit earlier about how the supplies looked a little bit disparate at the earlier stages of this push. Vanya was up about 50 to 30. That is not the case anymore. Hellraiser is now closing the gap. He's only 4 behind. Supply-wise, he's up in workers. This Natural expansion, it looks like he recalled a bunch of probes over. That's pretty cute. I love that. 12 probes now mining from the 3rd of Vanya. Even if Vanya somehow survives this, there's going to be less minerals at his 3rd. He's going to be so far behind. There's Disruptors on the way.
Yeah, Disruptors are going to make this terrifying. Sorry, guys, we popped out of game for just 1 moment here due to some lag issues. We're going to stop right back in, though. Let's, well, there's a video going. Oh, shoot, hang on. Go away, video.
It's all right. There's no micro happening right now.
We don't want you. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness.
But now there's a Disruptor. Oh my god. The army is in a corner. Okay, he notices the Disruptor. The Queen count gets essentially eliminated. We're down to 1 Queen here. Somehow, in all of this, he found time to make an Observer as well. A lot more files coming on down, but, I mean, this... Oh my god. I mean, at this point, what do you do as Vanya? You're down in supply now. 7 Immortals marching into the undefended Natural. Vanya looking like he wants to go for a counterattack. Disruptor picks off 2 of the Ravagers. This counterattack isn't even going to amount to anything because there's a proxy Nexus. Hellraiser is going to be 100% fine with this base trade scenario, even if he somehow loses everything, which he really shouldn't.
No, he definitely shouldn't. Is it worth the recall here, do you think, Pengy, to go all the way back home? Or as Vanya, just say, you know what? Take the Forge, take the Cyber Core. I don't need shield batteries anymore. I don't need cannons anymore. I've got Immortals. He even cancels
I really like what he's doing, actually.
War Prism.
Just he brings the War Prism back. Two Disruptors is going to be more than enough to hold this. He's able to continue applying pressure with the Immortals. I like that Vanya's keeping high ground here. He's like executing this push pretty well. The problem is that the game is essentially in an unwinnable position at this point. Great micro coming out, dodging some of the Disruptor shots. This time he's going to lose a couple of those Ravagers, but the problem again, these Immortals are trying to push up the ramp. There's actually quite a lot of units here for Vanya. He's got a couple spines now, but unfortunately not able to get the surround with those drones. He managed to get the surround with the drones, land some vials. Maybe he's able to clear the Immortals, but even then, there's just really not an answer for this hidden base, and Vanya still doesn't really know about it. He's doing what he can at the main, but now this army at the main's been thinned out, and 69 supply nice to 38 at this point in time. And, well, Hellraiser with an extremely well executed all-in here. And we talked in the last couple of games about how